Welcome everybody to Tea Time with Jessie. I'm here with Lu Yixing.
Hi everybody.
Introduce yourself real quick. Who are you?
Hi, my name is Yixing Liu. My English name is Star. I'm a teacher at Newton Public Schools.
Yes, and Newton Public Schools, Newton North High School, where you teach, was my high school.
Yeah.
And continues to be my high school. Even though I didn't have my Chinese lessons with you, I thought that since I'm back home for Thanksgiving, and I don't know when this is airing, but since I'm back home, it'd be a great idea to have over my high school's Chinese teacher and talk a little bit about our Chinese program, talk about the fundraiser show that we did together back at the beginning of COVID, and just generally somebody I would have over for tea anyway. So. Very glad to have you here. So
thank you for having me.
So you're Beijing, right? Yeah, all Beijing. So in Beijing, I was thinking of what tea should we make, and I spent many years in Beijing, and I was like, oh, I remember a lot of the Beijingers, they drink the mo li hua cha.
Yeah, I love
mo li hua, so the jasmine tea. So we're gonna drink the Yangchun Snow Jasmine and talk about learning Chinese, which is, as you guys know, probably the biggest decision I probably ever made in my life was doing high school Chinese class.
Yes, actually, Jessie's teacher was my master, meaning my mentor, before he retired. His name is Mr. Zhu, or Dr. Zhu Bin.
Yeah, Zhu Laoshi. So Zhu Laoshi, how is Zhu Laoshi doing?
Zhu Laoshi is great.
He's retired now, right?
Yeah, he's at San Diego.
Oh, really? He moved to San Diego.
Yeah,
he's not that far from me then.
I know.
I should go down to meet Zhu Laoshi next time I'm there. What was it like when you, I guess let's start from the beginning, sort of, you grew up in Beijing, and how did you get the idea to teach Chinese as a second language?
You know, I never thought of being a teacher. I did not want to be a teacher. Even though my mom taught physics in college, I didn't want to be a teacher. I thought it was too much. And then I became a PR company employee, and I managed some accounts, and I came to study to my graduate school at Emerson College.
Oh, nice! So you're in Boston.
Yeah.
There we go.
So that's how I started working after graduating from graduate school, and somehow I got into teaching. And one of my adult students was a high school teacher, and he couldn't take his job anymore. So he recommended me for an interview, and I got the job.
There we go. Was that in Newton North, or where was
no,
it?
that was in Belmont High School.
That was in Belmont.
Yeah, so that was 2001 until 2003.
So was your first time in the States then? Was that in Boston when you went to Emerson?
Yes.
So
my first time was the year before. I came for a conference.
Nice. But it sounds like you're kind of the opposite of me. I grew up kind of in the Boston area and then went to Beijing. And you grew up in Beijing and then came to Boston. So what do you think as a Beijinger, what's good about Boston, what's not good about Boston?
That's a good question. You know, the first time I came here, I loved the red brick road and the buildings. I don't see them in Beijing anymore. You know, Beijing is a very wide streets. But here they're all little streets, and I remember my professor, he crumpled up a piece of paper and opened up, and he said, "This is the map of Boston." You know,
good luck. In Beijing, I loved living in Beijing because they have these ring roads. They have the 二环路, 三环路, 四环路. And then in between that, everything is done in a grid. And so, and it's been like that for 1,000 years.
Yes, and then I was used to north and south and east and west.
You can't tell anything.
And here, it's one block. You go to one block and you go through a traffic light, and you may keep turning right, and you may not get back to the original place.
It's like on Waze, it'll like go straight, and you're like going right through a turn, and it's like, you know, then take a left turn, and the left turn is actually going straight.
Exactly. So I love that part of Boston. You know, it's interesting, and but the weather is definitely something that you try to like. Oh, thank you.
There we go. Here we'll try the here's the Snow Jasmine. This is the Yangchun 白雪 白雪 茉莉花茶. So that'll be good.
Cheers.
Cheers. Enjoy. Very fresh jasmine.
Very fragrant.
Very good. Yeah, smell the
this sounds.
Smell good. Little 老北京, little old Beijing energy there.
Yeah,
smell
especially.
Smell the tea.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
These are really good jasmine.
So fragrant.
It's 熏出来的. They take the leaves and they aromatize the leaves by putting the jasmine on top of the leaves.
Yeah.
And then they do that 4 times. So one batch of jasmine, do it again, do it again, do it again. So this is very classic. I remember in Beijing, you go into like a cab and you'll have a cab driver who's got some of this in a cup.
Yeah,
and they've been drinking the same leaves for 12 years or whatever.
Yeah, you know, when one of my friends told me that if you have a, you know, those the red clay, and then you put in tea leaves for long enough, and then finally the pot will absorb all the fragrance, and you don't need tea leaves anymore.
Yeah, you can just pour in water, and then it comes out. This is the sort of like the holy grail of teapot rearing, I suppose.
Oh, that's the first time I heard that word.
Yeah, there's a lot of this is really funny. So this is kind of a cool language thing about tea. I learned all my tea language in Chinese because I was in China, and I had to like relearn how to say all these words in English. You know, because I'm like, this tea is very xiang, and I'm like, no. And I'm like, but then in English you say the tea is fragrant, and you sound a little bit weird. Like, but in Chinese you just, 这很香, 很柔, 很柔. Like, you know, how do you say that in English? Like very soft, very smooth, very
smooth. Yeah, probably.
Yeah,
like wine, right?
Yeah, 顺.
Chun. Yeah, chun. Yeah, that's a good word. Yeah,
that's a word. We have a tea on the website that's called 冰岛醇. And I translated this as 冰岛 mellow, but it's not really mellow. It's more like the chun is like, it's just like a smooth pureness.
Yeah.
So this is a good time to segue into learning Chinese because, as we're just saying here, there's a lot of words that don't really translate directly. It's different ideas. What do you think is like the biggest challenge for the high school students that are taking Chinese from scratch, like me?
Oh, yeah. That's a good question because kids change over time. And I started teaching in 2003. So at that time, the difficulty would be, the tones, how to write a character, and how do you put it into a sentence. Because at that time, kids who chose to learn Chinese, a lot of them liked Bruce Lee's movies. Oh, yeah? Okay. So they were thinking, if I'm getting into Chinese class, I'm going to do lion dance, I'm going to do martial arts, you know.
Well, this is the culture they know.
Yeah.
And then there's like the basics of like, well, we know there's characters, but I have no idea how I would ever learn those.
Yeah, so it's more academic challenges, but nowadays it's more of, okay, so I picked to study Chinese. How do I balance my life? Because Chinese takes sometimes a category 4 language and takes more time than other Romance languages.
What is a category 4 language?
So the American Council for Teaching Foreign Language has different categories. So they did a data gathering about how long it will take some students to learn a certain language. So for example, Spanish, French, they're all in category 1.
Oh, that's why it's so easy. It was just easy mode in Spanish class in high school. Not like Chinese. Easy.
Oh, come on.
No, I'm just kidding. I like bashing. I like Spanish. Okay, so that's category 1.
Yeah, and then category 4, which is like Farsi, Chinese, Arabic. These languages will take longer time than French and Spanish.
And that's for native English speakers to learn, right?
Yeah.
Because like I remember I was so jealous. We had a Vietnamese disciple of my comedy master, Chen Tianxiu, who was so good at Chinese. And her tones were so good, and I was thinking like, it's got to be easier because she already spoke Vietnamese as her first language.
Yeah, because it's
a tonal language. Yeah. But she was very talented. But it was easier for Vietnamese. There's no hardest language, but if you're an English speaker,
it's going
to be hard to learn.
Yes.
So then, what type of students tend to take the category 4 languages? Like,
I think it really depends. Oh, thank you.
Yep.
So Newton is a very special place. It has, Newton North and Newton South are very heterogeneous schools. We have 2,000 students for each school, and kids who are, for example, we have in other districts we don't see this much, that we have kids who were adopted from China by non-Chinese speaking families, and we have kids whose one parent is an Asian parent, the other parent is not.
Yeah.
And we have students who were probably from Europe somewhere, and then they already mastered 4 or 5 European languages, and now they're adding one more.
I remember in my high school Chinese, it drove me crazy because there were a couple students that spoke Cantonese already.
Yeah.
They didn't speak Mandarin. They were in a Mandarin class, but they would be in the back of the class speaking, at the time, I was like, they're speaking Chinese in the back. And then I'm like, are they just here to not have to work? And the answer was yes, they were there. No, I'm just, the answer, they want to learn how to write. That was the thing. They told me their parents said, you have to take this class so you can learn how to write.
But you know, it's interesting how when you think about, Cantonese speakers, then they may have an easier time. It's actually not. Because Cantonese and Mandarin are close in some way. And so sometimes it's hard to, right?
It's like all of your instincts are going to be wrong.
Yeah.
You think you can do it, but actually it is a different language. So you have all these students from different backgrounds in a classroom in Newton North. And then how do you keep people excited about studying the language even though it's harder?
By giving them candies.
You got to have the right treat.
You know, kids have to feel that they have to feel confident, right? They have to feel like they're going somewhere, right? They're mastering something, and through their own efforts and their own work, that they feel they are accomplishing something, right? So it's not like I'm making you learn, or I think this is so useful in 20 years. You know, they're only thinking about this weekend, right? But they have to feel accomplished.
Sure.
And they have to feel connected with you, right?
So it's funny. So like adults will be like, how am I going to use this? But for the kids, it's like, am I winning? Like if I don't feel like I'm winning, I'm not going to keep going. Whatever that means to them. You know?
Exactly. Or do I belong? Do I belong here? I feel that I'm connected with the students here. I'm connected with the teacher. I feel connected with the culture. The connectiveness is important.
So you have all these different types of kids that are learning Chinese for different reasons. And then as a teacher, how do you adjust to that? Because you can't just come in and assume everybody knows nothing.
Right.
It's actually easier sometimes, I find,
they
to
know
teach.
Nothing, right?
You know, when I taught comedy in China, improv, it was actually a lot of fun to teach like improv, stand-up, like these Western styles of comedy in China, because you would find people who are like professional performers, but have never done stand-up.
Right.
Whereas in America, like if you've done comedy, like everybody thinks they know a little because they've tried a little, but it's actually harder to teach people that are starting at different places, I find.
Heterogeneous classes, yes.
So how do you take that sort of class and prepare to teach people that have all these different backgrounds and reasons of learning Chinese?
Yeah, that's always the hardest thing, and that's the most important, like most interesting thing to be a teacher, right? I just love the differences. Like every year, even though this is my 19th year teaching, I find it challenging in different ways every year, but I love it since they're all different. They come from different background, they have different motivation. Oh, thank you. You know, that's the interesting part. Like you get to know every single one of them. It takes time, but once you get to know them, you know, they open up a different world for me. Right? So once you get a connection with them, for example, I have a student this year who is a cello player, and he is in the Boston Youth Symphony Orchestra and playing cello, and they had a field trip for his music class to go to see Yo-Yo Ma's performance.
Oh, great.
And of course, I went to see Yo-Yo Ma before, and I was like, oh, yeah, that's great. So he came back. We had a long conversation. I just loved it.
That's great. So
every student had their own passion.
So it's like finding your own way into the language that is important. And that totally speaks to me, because that was, you know, I started learning Chinese basically out of interest, but I kept learning Chinese because, I want to do comedy in Chinese, and if I want to do that, I want to learn xiangsheng, I better know Chinese. I want to speak to the tea vendors. I want to go to the tea hills and be able to speak to the tea farmers. I better speak Chinese. Even though it seems like a lot of work to put in to speak to a tea farmer, it doesn't feel like that if you have your own mission.
Passion,
you know?
right? Yeah, absolutely.
So you'll individually be paying attention to students and trying to figure out who likes what. You like music? Let me show you Chinese musician.
Yeah. And it's not only me, I have to say. I feel that's what when I was at Belmont, I learned all my teaching pedagogy, which trained me so well. But Newton is a different place. It's very special that all my colleagues, I wouldn't say all, but most of my colleagues in Newton North and South, they really care about the kids. So if the whole school is about, like, oh, I'm connecting with you, but I have a hard time connecting with you, but then someone else is connecting with you.
So that you can know, like, even if I don't necessarily have a super special relationship with that kid, somebody does.
Yes.
They're kind of taken care of. So,
Yeah.
So that's great. So what are the, going back to the students that are learning and you teaching Chinese, what are kind of the biggest challenges for the kids? Is it the tones? Is it the characters? Is it the culture? What's the hardest thing for most kids about learning Chinese?
That's a hard question to answer, because if they have all the time they have in the world, it should not be hard, right?
Yeah.
So it's true for all the subjects.
Yeah.
So I think the hardest one is, number one, how do they feel motivated, right? Number two, how do they find time? So they're not only studying Chinese, they're studying all 7 other subjects,
they have a
right?
lot of subjects.
So if they have...
And Newton North, for those of you who don't know, they wrote a report in the New York Times about how our high school was crazy and produced kids that were very well prepared for college, but very, very, very stressed about applying for college. Yeah. And I personally felt like college was easier than high school. Yeah. Like, I was very well prepared for college by going to the Newton public schools. So, so it's more of the time. And that's totally true, because I think a lot of people, they come to me and they say, how did you learn all those characters? And there's no secret. You write them over and over and over again. Yeah. I remember Zhu Laoshi always had us do the character sheets.
Yeah.
And then I'll see if I can find this old video. It's hilarious. I made at the end of the year once, I made a parody video. At the time, there was a movie that came out called Snakes on a Plane. Have you ever seen Snakes?
No.
It's a hilarious movie. They're on a plane, snakes are on the plane. And it's an action movie and the snakes are on the plane. And I was, that year the Snakes on a Plane came out, I was like, I want to make character sheets on a plane. And so we went into the basement of the old school at Newton North, where it looks like just the hallways are like, labyrinth. We put chairs in the aisles like it was a plane. And I got everybody's character sheets from all of the students. I said, when you're done, give them to me. So I had hundreds of character sheets. And we had people whose only job was to throw character sheets on us. Like, we're being attacked by the character sheets.
You have to send it to me.
I'll see if I can find it. I may be on old YouTube. I'll try to find it. But it was, the character sheets were a menace. But it was just a matter of time.
Yes.
If that was the only thing I was doing, it wouldn't have been hard.
Right.
If I also had to learn chemistry and history and even within Chinese, grammar and pronunciation, and then I had to grind on the character sheets, that's when it got hard. It was the time.
Yeah. And there's no shortcut, right? So it's sometimes kids want to find shortcuts.
Yeah.
And especially that nowadays kids are on the go all the time.
Yeah.
Right? So many kids are having activities, they move around, they're always in the car.
Yeah. You can't really study character sheets in the car. You have to be sitting down, you have to be writing the characters. So So how do you deal with the overwork of the kids? Do you adjust the way you teach, or you just kind of give them more work?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, so the schedule, our high school has changed. That we used. Oh, thank you. We used to have for example, 4 foreign language classes per week. Now we have 3. That means kids only have my homework for 3 days a week rather than 4.
It's a little better.
So that's a little better, and then also class time is longer.
Oh, that's better.
So for we have tracks, right? For one track, we move slower, and then kids also have time to do a little homework in the class time.
That's cool.
So, and then another thing is that we have the built-in self-study time in school. So I think the structure is the most important thing, right, for kids. That it's not like, oh, I'm leaving you alone with all these 7 assignments. You go home and figure it out.
That makes sense. So, a little bit of help.
Yeah.
So that's good. So so the students are studying high school Chinese. What do you think high school Chinese can really accomplish? Do you think like people are going to come out of high school Chinese speaking fluently and talking to, like, they could go to China and live in China? Is it that level of Chinese? Or is it more like, okay, this will give you a baseline, and then in the future, if you keep studying, you'll actually be able to speak Chinese?
Yeah. So my friend who teaches Chinese at Bigelow Middle School, Gao Jie 老师. So Jie told me something that I always remember. Oh, thank you. It's very good tea, by the way.
Oh, thank you very much.
And then she said, if your kids, your students, graduate from high school and will continue in college and are determined to go to China, that means you're successful.
That is a success. I agree with that. That sounds like that's totally true, because it's not the type of language where, like, I learned Spanish in high school, for instance. I took Spanish and Chinese. After high school Spanish, we took a vacation after I graduated that year between high school and college. My family went to Spain for 2 weeks. And I was able to speak to the cab driver and get us around a little bit and be able to translate basic stuff. But we didn't die. And then we lived. But in China, I remember I did all the high school Chinese plus the equivalent of 2 years college Chinese. Landed in China to study abroad, and I don't think I could have.
Equipped,
I was glad somebody picked us up at the airport in a bus. I wasn't it was hard. It was very, very hard.
Yeah.
And so, do you think that this is just because it's that category 4 language, it's just harder, or is there something specific about Chinese that makes it harder to just pick up and go?
Yeah, definitely. I think they're the same thing, because Chinese and English are so different. In Spanish, if you say, for example, excelente, and people know that's excellent, right? But you can't get that out of Chinese. You can see two people very excitingly say something, but they are probably just talking about toothpaste, right? You have no idea. So that's why. And then the speed and the
speed was hard.
Dialects from every region in China is very different. So I feel like for me, if my kids, my students, if they go to a Chinese market and if they can pick out one thing and say how much money in Chinese, that's good enough.
That's a win. Yeah,
right?
That is a big win.
If they feel not shameful or they feel courageous enough to say something.
Yeah. Because that's the big thing, I think, between the people who really speak the language well and who don't, is you have to be willing to try.
Yes.
I put it this way sometimes. I'm like, you're going to say it wrong.
Yeah.
You're going to say it wrong 1,000 times.
Yeah.
The question is, do you want that 1,000 times to happen quickly? Right. Or do you want to spread it out over a long time?
That's a good point.
You're going to say it wrong. So if you're going to say it wrong, you might as well say it wrong repeatedly as fast as possible, and then you'll get past saying it wrong and start to say it right. But a lot of people never get past that.
Yeah, I think it's I feel like it's the teacher's mentality and also how you put it out there. Our job is not to make you be perfect in class.
Yeah.
My job is to help you and for you to feel comfortable making a mistake.
Yeah,
right?
That's good.
So as long as they feel comfortable with me, they feel making mistakes in front of this group of kids and in front of me are okay, then that's good. That's good. Yeah.
Now, I'm taking a guess here, but I'm guessing that making the kids feel comfortable making mistakes was not the way your high school was in Beijing.
Correct.
So how is your high school different from the high school you teach in now, and what do you think was good about each of them and bad about each of them?
Yeah, I think, for a lot of people say, oh, you come to America, you probably will have a culture shock. I don't think I had a culture shock, but I had a high school culture shock.
So going to a high school was more culture shocking. You're like, this is different, whatever.
Yeah. I do feel that my mind has changed so much in a way that, in China, our only goal for high school is to get into a good college. Yeah. Right? And that's the goal for me and for my family and for my classmates, for all the people I know, basically.
So it's kind of less learning the material and more, you need to know this to pass the test.
Yes, you need to get a good grade.
Yeah.
And then if you find a good college, then you have a wider road later, you have a better choice. Thank you. Yep. But here is, and you are basically not evaluated, but you're constantly under judgment of your grades and by points, right? So if I'm an academic driven kid, that works for me.
Yeah.
But if I'm an artist, or I'm not saying artists are not academic, but, some kids are just very into art.
Yeah.
Some kids are very into music or any other, or
sports
athletics,
or,
right? Any drama, anything,
fashion,
right?
Could be anything.
And so this academia way is not the best fit for the child. So the child may feel, I hate my day, you know, I don't feel like I'm doing anything right. But here is that you have multiple choices. And if you are academically driven, go ahead.
Yeah.
But if you like art instead, go ahead, right? You can make your own choice.
There's more rules. And then do you feel like how much of that is the way the school is set up, and how much of that is like the culture at home giving people the choice of different paths? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because if you could have like some students in like China, some parents might be like, oh, we would encourage you learning art, but there's no art class in your school, so it kind of doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And then similarly, you could have the other way around, where you could have people here that, you know, maybe they're encouraging their kids to study, but the academics aren't strong in that school.
Right.
You know, so like how much of it is the school and how much of it is the home?
I think it's a structure and the values of the community probably. So for example, in China, all parents talk about is what after school program are your kids in, or which college do you want to get into, or what's your plan after college, what kind of job, what kind of major you want to get your child into. Yeah. But here we also have parents who say, oh, we found this beautiful program where my child is mentoring a younger child, or my child is so good with little kids and they want to babysit, they want to walk the dogs, they started a lemonade stand. Exactly. They start their own business just to shovel snow, right? Yeah. And that is okay. But in China, most of the time it would be, oh, that's a waste of your time. Doing housework is a waste of your time. You should study.
Do you feel like being prepared in the Chinese way of thinking, you went to high school in China, what did that feel when you let me rephrase this.
Yeah.
So you went to school in China. Was there stuff that you felt very well prepared for when you came here?
Yeah. And
then stuff you felt completely unprepared for because of the way you went to high school?
I would say I feel very prepared. Not so much for English, honestly.
English maybe not so good. English is hard.
Yeah, even though I studied English in high school and then my major was English in college. I worked for American companies for 5 years.
And still, when I landed here, it was still hard.
Yeah, I remember the first night when I landed here, my friend picked me up from the airport and we went to Stop and Shop or Star Market, whichever. And he said, oh, you should pick out some detergent. So I picked out a detergent and a carton of eggs and put it on at the checkout place. And the cashier said, oh, you're all set. And I couldn't understand what that meant.
All set.
Set, you mean set a table?
Yeah.
Set,
I am set?
Yeah, I know. So that for one word, after so many years, I feel, at that time I felt, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. But that's okay. So I guess the main thing I felt prepared was that it's okay if you made a mistake and if you don't know anything, then you learn.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, that's good. So and I think especially for people who are just new, like that sort of stuff is hard. You know, it's the basic things. Like if something is hard anywhere and you have struggles, that feels okay.
Yeah.
If you're buying eggs and then you're like, oh, what? Now you feel like, oh, I'm the problem.
I know.
But it's not. You're not the problem. It's just experience, and that's the thing. I think a lot of people who take languages in school but never get a chance to live in the other country, that stuff is not going to be there on day one.
Right.
But if you really go and buy eggs once a week for a couple weeks, you'll get it by week 3, 4, or 5. It doesn't take that long if you have the chance to live in the other place.
Yeah.
So then having lived between the two places, what do you think now about what's going on in China with English learning and that sort of stuff? Do you have any idea whether the English learning is better now than it was when you were studying?
Definitely. Oh, yeah. Definitely. I remember even when I was in college, we had classes where, we're lucky, my college is in Beijing as well. So
which college were you at?
Beijing Science and Technology University.
Okay.
You know,
Beijing, right?
Beijing 科技大学.
Yeah.
So we had Americans at the time. We had American tourists who want to travel in China, but then they also teach during the school year, and they travel, and they have a place to live on the campus. So we had foreign teachers.
Nice.
But then on the side, we also study grammar very heavily. Like for this one vocabulary, you remember all 7 meanings of it, and you're tested by filling the blank and all that. Like which preposition is it in or on or to? You know.
Yeah.
So I remember those are very hard. But at the same time, my dad, who thought so far ahead, he came to America to be on business trip 2 times. And when he went to China, it was in 1987 or 86, I think. In China, you can't buy these big electronics like a TV, right? Or color TV. So for people who come outside of China, you have a ticket to buy one big item. The票. So he bought a TV and a subtitle machine.
Ooh, that was a good call.
And a subtitle machine going in with a DVD. So it's a DVD combo. And then when he went to work here, he would put a cassette tape, like a VCR?
The VHS.
A VHS, into the machine, and it would record nonstop.
So he would just record lots of content.
Yeah, lots of content, and he would bring them back to me.
Oh, so he couldn't bring the TV back because it was too big, but he would buy a TV, tape lots of stuff with subtitles, and then bring back real media for you. Which it's absurd how easy it is now on the internet.
I know, right?
But although it's every year it's harder to get Western media in China.
Right.
So it's like we're not that bad to the point where we need to bring physical DVDs back.
Right.
But it's just so important for people to be able to see real life happening in the other place.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
I remember I was watching these commercials on Sunday morning, selling houses and these Barbie dolls that the hair can grow if you grind arm. And I watched Bambi probably hundreds of times because and then with the subtitle machine, I could read the subtitle at the same time.
And then your ear is getting trained, which is actually, I remember when I learned Xiangcheng with Master Ding. Master Ding was a comedian. He wasn't a language teacher, but he was a great language teacher. And one thing that he told me very early on was that he's like, you don't need to be performing Xiangcheng to be learning Xiangcheng. Listen to everybody talking, like really listen, pay attention, listen to the way it's happening. Because when the first step, 先模仿, first imitate, 然后自己说. So imitate first and then say it yourself. So a lot of American artists, it's kind of funny, as an artist, I would never go like, I'm going to copy everyone's comedy. Like that would be a bad way to be a comedian. But he was like, don't try to be funny and write your own material and do everything all at once and in another language. Listen to the way they do the comedy and then do it the same way we do it. Just so you can get the ear and then the mouth going together. And then when you have the confidence, then you can start to add your own thing in there. Oh. So it's like, and hearing the same thing over and over again is really useful. I'm sure if you heard Bambi 100 times.
Yeah, I know.
Every single word and the way they say it, you're past the meaning. You're listening to the language and the way it goes up and down.
I know,
And that sort of stuff is necessary to get the foreign language to work.
Absolutely.
So that sounds like it was a really good experience to be able to get those.
So I'm very grateful.
Very cool. So 我们应该多说中文，给美国的观众一个机会学一点中文 So we should speak more Chinese. So we're gonna take a break. We'll be right back. But thank you for sharing the stories. And what did you think of the 茉莉花茶?
Oh, can I take all of your 茉莉花茶?
I'll give you the bag.
It's really good.
This is great. Thank you.
I miss my home.
If the Beijingers like it, I'm glad that I can get some Beijingers to enjoy the Jasmine.
Don't buy it, okay? Because I'm buying all of them.
Yeah, we'll buy all of them. All right. We'll be right back with another tea. I'm Jesse.
I'm Star. Hi.
Awesome. We'll be right back.
The internet is a dangerous place. A VPN can help protect you from that danger. What danger? Think of something. Now think of something you haven't even thought of. That could happen to you. The problem with most VPNs, though, is they taste way worse than tea. We interviewed one of our coders to find out why. Well, you're asking why the VPN tastes worse than tea? What do you mean? It's software. It's not excuses. Of course, this could all be avoided by buying tea directly from Jesse's Tea House. Jesse gets his teas straight from small tea shops and tea farmers in China and puts them into his subscription service. Use the code JessePod for $10 off your first order of $30 or more.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Tea Time with Jesse. I'm Jesse here with Lew Lauscher, Star Lew.
Hi, everybody.
We were just talking about Chinese language learning. Lew Lauscher teaches at Newton North High School, which is my high school, and I suppose is a disciple of my Chinese teacher, Tu Lauscher. And we've also had some, so even though I didn't go to your classes in high school, we've had a lot of recent history together because when the coronavirus hit, I was back in the States, and fans of the channel may know, but if you don't know, I'd lived in China for 9 years. I was not planning on moving back to America. I came back for what I thought would be a 9-day vacation, and coronavirus hit in midair. So especially in January and February of 2020, in that time between when China had locked down, but America did not have the virus yet, it was a very stressful time for Chinese people everywhere.
Yes.
Especially for people like you that had family back in Beijing, and
Yes.
you know, everybody was locking down, and it was unclear what was happening, and people really needed you know, masks and health equipment. And at the time, I felt the only thing I could do was I thought I'd put on a fundraiser comedy show, and the only place I thought I could get a theater was my high school. So I contacted Lew Lauscher, and through you, we were able to get the auditorium at our high school. And we put on a charity show, which I thought we'd be lucky if 100 people came.
Yes.
But we had like 600 people that came, and it was an amazing show. And after that, not only did we raise, I think $10,000, over $12,000 for medical supplies, the video of the show went viral in China.
Yes.
And so I don't know if you know, but the final count, I counted about 400 million views.
Really?
So that in China's 1.3 billion people, so that's about a quarter of the population
That's
of China.
unbelievable.
If those numbers are real, which they may not be. But it really was a moment. And I have a joke I'll show you later, but I have screenshots of both the NPR talking about the show and the Chinese police Weibo account talking about the show. So I think I'm the only person in history that's made something that both NPR and the Chinese police both like. So if anyone says we can't live together, there's always a little bit in the middle of the Venn diagram. And so I want to talk really briefly about that. What was that time like? And then what was it like for you helping to prepare that show? Because we went real fast.
I know.
Yeah, we had almost no time to prepare.
Yes, yes. So I think what happened was we contacted each other without thinking about a fundraiser. But then at the same time, you mentioned that China is in need for PPE. And so Newton Public Schools and Beijing Jingshan School had an exchange. I always have an exchange for a long time. And our students couldn't go because China was, during the time, it was closing down. So because of that, I mentioned that to you. And then you said, let's do a fundraiser, right? So I went back to my school, asked my principal, and my principal said, what are we waiting for? Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Right? So when we got an okay, and the theater director, Mr. Adam Brown.
Yep, Mr. Brown, legend.
Totally legend.
Legendary.
Totally legend. Yes. So he
Cut to the picture of Mr. Brown he hates. All right.
and then he graciously offered, okay, this is the time we can provide support for technical or audio and video, and then I think that's how we got right. And you designed the
I did the show. I did the performing, but there were also students involved. They did some shows. Right. We had a friend of mine come and play violin. Right. And you know, as you guys may have guessed from what I did with my life, my school had a great theater department. So Mr. Brown is a real legend, and the Newton North Theater Inc. theater group, they put on like 12 plays a year, many of them student directed. When I was a senior in high school, I directed our improv troupe and put on shows, and it was it came together very fast, but the school was very talented, and and everybody was up for it.
Yeah, and everybody is just very supportive.
Yeah. By the way, this is the 2011 white tea, 福鼎白茶，已经12年了 with 12-year aged, and the old white tea is very tasty. Give it a smell of that.
Wow, that's very different from Hua Cha.
Very different from the Mo Li Hua, from the Jasmine. So, but yeah, so we were putting together this show.
It was like within what, 2 weeks?
I think it was even less than that. I think it was like 10 days or something like that.
Oh,
it was pretty crazy.
It was crazy, and we were, and we sent out notifications. Like some people were going out to putting posters everywhere.
Yeah.
And one of the teachers had a connection with Channel 5.
Yep.
So we put our news, we put our poster on Channel 5 News.
Yep, we got on the local news.
And we got it on all these websites, right? So the tickets were sold out, and we had corporates who were making donations.
It was crazy. I mean, it was amazing, and it was definitely. It's kind of sad to say, but I think it was the high moment of U.S.-China relations in the pandemic, because like the next week everything started going downhill.
I know.
But it was amazing for me because it was this experience where we went out of our way, and everybody in the community really pulled together to do this fundraising, and then a month and a half later, we had the virus hit America very hard. And I had 100 private messages on Douyin asking, oh, we have masks, we have extra masks, can we send them back to you now?
Yeah.
And it was just really, it was that moment where I really realized, like, if you're trying to bring people together, if you make the first step, the other people may not make a step, but usually they're going to take a bigger step than you took.
Right.
Because they see you kind of went out of your way first to make it happen.
Yeah.
And so that was a really big show, and it was. It went everywhere in China. It went over even places in the States. At the time, I didn't think it would be the last show I ever did for years. But it was definitely an incredible experience. And now it's funny. I'm like Newton famous.
I know you're not only Newton famous, you're everywhere famous.
No, but like in Newton, I remember even yesterday I was visiting a friend for Thanksgiving, and they had Chinese neighbors. And they were like, we were at the show. We were at it was like a big
everybody
event.
loved it.
It was everybody remembers that fundraiser show. So I want to thank you for helping to put that together so fast.
Thank you. And remember, we went to someone's house to pack those PPEs.
Yep.
And
it was a great experience. It was actually it was really funny. It was right in that period where we could still all be together in the house together. And it was a really great experience, and it was I feel like we did so much in such a short time, and then it was followed by everybody staying inside for a year. So that was a crazy time, but I'm glad that we have kind of come through it. Pulled through it, and now everything's a little bit better. We can enjoy the tea. So so here, take a sip of this. Let me know what you think. That's nice.
It's very different from the jasmine tea, but it's very lasting a very long time in a.
Yeah, it has this sort of like
aftertaste, very sweet.
It has a nice sweet aftertaste. So you swallow, and a lot of bad tea, what you taste is the mouthfeel will be okay, but then when you swallow it, you get this kind of bitter or gross aftertaste.
Yeah, this is such a long. It's almost like a violin note, and
I like this. I got to learn better ways of describing the tea. I like the violin note, but in Chinese say 回甘. The sort of returning taste, returning flavor is very sweet.
Yeah.
This
is lovely.
Very nice. So the old white tea is like, white tea I think is slept on in America. Like not enough people know about white tea, and definitely not enough people know about old white tea. The aged white tea gets really, really good. Very herbal, very sweet. Excellent. So
wow.
So that was I think the first time we really well, I don't know first time, but the working together on that show was a great experience. And then about a year and a half later, fans of the Tea House will be happy to know that Lu Laoshi was actually one of the people that packed the very first sampler boxes we ever did.
Yeah, I know, with my student.
Yeah, with the students. At the very beginning of the Tea House, I literally started it at this table, making videos at my parents' house. And eventually people were saying, oh, we want to try the tea. I should make the teas. And so I thought, okay, I'll put together a sampler. And at the time, it was not thought out very carefully. I knew that at some point we would need to get the 4 teas into bags and then into a box and then sent out to everybody. But I had no idea that we would have so many people interested. And so I built a plan that me and my family would pack tea and we would make 100 boxes. But we pre-ordered 500 boxes.
Yeah, it was a lot.
So in the end, I basically was left saying, like, 4 people can't do this. We need help. And so I reached out to our synagogue, and I also reached out to you in the high school Chinese program. And I was like, if we speak Chinese while packing, can you give extra credit to your students?
Absolutely. And I said, extra credit? Yes, we're on.
Yes, this is good. So, and so we had students from the classes come and help pack tea, and a lot of those, the very first of the tea samplers was done by the Newton North High School Chinese program.
Yes.
What was that like, being in that room packing all that tea? What did that feel like?
At that time I was just thinking, oh, this is such a cool idea, right? With little samplers and people can try different things, and then also involve the students in making something that they can see the impact of what they do, right? And also, it's interesting. Do you remember there's a student's name whose name is Gabe?
Yeah, I remember him.
I never thought he would be so fast doing this.
He got really into it.
I know.
He was packing the cards, like he had all the cards like preset, and he was getting everything right and perfect in every box.
I know. It was amazing. So I'm seeing my students a side that I've never seen. And this year he's a senior. And he got this, I think it was an MIAA sportsmanship award.
Nice.
So when I saw the picture from the Newton Public School newsletter, I'm thinking, wow, maybe he is started from the tea pack.
Maybe. I don't know how much credit I can take for that, but it was definitely a crazy moment. I mean, in the early days of the tea company, we were packing tea for all day Saturday, all day Sunday. It took 16 hours. We live streamed the whole thing.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, we did. We had a camera up there. Not many people watch 16 hours of us boxing teas, but it was one of these moments where, kind of like the charity show, where afterwards I was exhausted, but I was like, I feel like I really did something today.
I know.
Right?
So meaningful.
It was very meaningful, and it was. How does it feel for you as you're Beijinger and Chinese person in the States? What do you think about the fact that Americans are now, and people all around the world are watching tea culture online?
Yeah.
Does that get you excited?
Absolutely. I feel that anything that can connect people, it would be meaningful.
Yeah.
So especially for tea, it's like wine. When people try different. I'm not a wine drinker, so I can't tell the difference between this and that. I can only tell my favorite is rosé.
Yeah.
But I can tell the difference between tea, right? And if I see another person who we may not speak the same language or share the same background, but we have the same interest in tea, right? I feel, oh, that's such a great connection that we have.
Yeah. It's surprising because I did, 9 years of Chinese comedy. And in China as well, even though there are connections between comedy and tea, the comedy was done at tea houses, chaguar. This is called Jessie Chaguar, Jessie's Tea House. My original hope would be, and hopefully we're kind of getting there now, of doing a place that's not only a tea space, but a cultural space, event space. That there is a connection, but most people who are comedians are not drinking tea, and then, vice versa. Right. But I think that they both have a lot in common, and that they're bringing people together.
Yes.
I think that in America and in Europe and a lot of these places, the tea, it's a drink. But for me, like, tea is this. It's like, oh, I haven't seen you in a long time. I want to talk about some interesting stuff. Come over, let's drink tea. And I feel like in the States, we're really missing that.
Yes. Yes.
I feel like in China, people are much like, people go to dinner and sit there for 3 hours.
Yes.
They came to eat, but really they need to talk. You know.
Yes.
And I don't know if you feel that too. Do you feel like it's hard to just like find places to talk in American culture? Do you feel like that?
I think the coffee shop is probably a place that people normally go. But the thing is for example, the tea culture, when we look at how you make tea, and it's an art. Yeah. Right? It's not only...
They call it chai.
Chai, yes. It's an art. It's not like, oh, we go somewhere, we order something, and we sit there and just drink this thing. Yeah. It's more of Oh,
Yeah.
the process is also
对，
interesting,
对。
and the art of it, the making of it, it has so much detail to it.
做得好也有点水平啊，
就像
这
杰西一样
就像我一样，
对就是
这是他说的，也不是我说的，
对，这是大家公认的。
公认的啊。But that is true. It's like I think it's funny. Like a lot of Americans they'll say to me, they're like, "Oh, I don't have time for that." I'm like, "That's the problem.
Yes.
That's the problem. You need to sit down, do a good job at it,
Yeah.
and treat yourself well, treat your guests well, take a moment."
Zen moment.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and I have nothing against coffee as a beverage, but it's more the coffee culture in America. Not the sort of high-end drip coffee people, but like most of the coffee, you're like, I need coffee to work.
Yeah, I need it on the go.
You're drinking two cups of coffee at the same time while driving a car, and it's like, this is not why I got into tea. Like it's not the liquid, although the liquid is nice. But it is. It's more about that stuff around it. If that makes sense.
Yes.
So then, what did you think when I told you I needed your help to pack tea boxes?
Honestly, I didn't think that your business would grow so fast.
I didn't think so either.
I was just thinking, oh, okay, time to see you, and then time to get my students to get into Chinese culture.
And then you showed up, and it's like, oh, this is work. like we actually have work to do.
Well, I just didn't think it was that many, but I think it would be great. I saw how Gabe was doing that. I was thinking, wow, I'm looking at kids from a different light, right?
That's cool.
So yeah,
you never know. So
I'm so happy for you.
Yeah, I'm happy as well that it's taken off in a way that I definitely did not expect. But it's I'm glad it's brought value to other people too, because that's the thing is like if it's just about, I think a lot of the challenges. I live in Hollywood now, and a lot of people are there because they want it to be about them, and as a performer, it has to be something about you. You can't be like, oh, it's all the audience. No, no, you want to be on camera.
Yeah.
But if it's all about you, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And so it's a big, and I think tea is the same way. It's like, yeah, I want to be a good host. I want to be doing these things. I want to have good tea myself. But it has to also be about the people you're sharing the time with.
Yes.
And so that is definitely something that I feel like the tea has been really good for.
Yes.
And I'm glad that you got a chance to be a part of it. And thank you again for that help at the
I think
very
it's all,
beginning.
Meant to be. I feel right.
Yeah, 有点缘分, 茶缘, like the tea fate.
Yeah.
It's definitely a thing, people. 茶缘, look it up.
Yeah.
So we had a lot of great tea. Before we head out, I wanted to talk a little bit more about you mentioned it before, the Jingshan exchange program. So one of my biggest life regrets is I never went on the Jingshan exchange program. So
you can always go now.
I can always go now. And it's funny because I lived right next to my comedy club in Beijing, was right across from the Jingshan school.
Yes.
And so I was right there. But explain what is the program, and then what has it been, how long has it been around, and what does it do?
Okay. So Beijing Jingshan School is Newton Public Schools exchange program sister school. So we've been together for 40 years. In fact, the exchange program is the longest of the nation of America.
40 years ago, and again, China really only started opening up in the 80s.
Yes.
So 40 years is pretty hard to do. There aren't a lot of places that have been around for 40 years doing cooperation. So, students from the schools, it's just an school exchange program?
Yes. So we would send our students to Jingshan School for about 4 months, and Jingshan School will send students and teachers to our school for 4 months, and it's between North and South High School and Jingshan School. Nice. And we unfortunately had to put it on a plateau for 3 years, but now we are restarting.
That's good. I'm very glad these things are restarting, because that was one of the most painful things for me about the pandemic. Obviously, I couldn't go back to China, but everybody in my life that was dealing with cultural exchange also couldn't go back.
Right.
So everybody I knew was like, well, we want to be doing this, but we can't.
Yeah.
And it's just like a bad way to live, where everybody is not doing what they want to be doing.
Right.
And so I'm glad that it's starting back up.
Yeah.
So the plan is for the students from Newton to start going to Jingshan next year.
24-25 school year.
Nice.
So even though we were not doing in-person exchange, we did not stop doing the online exchange for the past 3 years.
Oh, that's great. Okay,
so we did some video sharing. Our students participated in Jingshan School's Chinese idiom performance. So I can send a few to you.
Yeah, send me the clips.
They're very funny. they acted out the Chinese idioms, and they're so creative. I just love them. And some of them got an award in the Haidian district.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so we did that, and we also had our administrator had an online connection. So the Jingshan School principal and the program director and our school's principals had an online Zoom meeting. And we also celebrated some of the long-term supporters, such as the New North principal, Jim Marini.
That's great.
And we celebrate some people's legacy. And our event we have another event coming up on December 14th.
So that's super fun. So then what do you feel is what's the most important part, or like why are these exchange programs important, do you think?
I can send you a few students' testimony. I think it's more of the students suddenly realize when they are away from their family for such a long time, they develop their own potential. They found their own independence. They know suddenly I'm on my own. How do I do problem solving? How do I deal with a different culture? What can I learn? What can I bring back?
It's tricky because when you're in school in America or whatever, you go to school next to your house, and like even if you're trying something challenging in the classroom, there's kind of a safety net. You're very close to home. When you're in China, you kind of know that, like, okay, the teachers are not going to let us go crazy, but we're in China, anything could happen, kind of.
Right.
And so that sort of like change of scenery, you think, really wakes up the students to being a person.
Yes. So we made a short documentary.
Oh, great.
And the premiere will be on December 14th.
Oh, very cool.
And we interviewed 3 generations of exchange students.
Very cool.
With the oldest one was from the first year of 1986, and the newest one was from 2019.
Wow. That's cool. That's especially, it's really funny for me that the history of these things is really cool because China both has like old history and then like new old history.
Right.
So like 40 years is a long time for a China-US school exchange. But then like in Beijing, I was on streets, like, the school is on streets that might have been laid down by the Mongols in, whatever, 800 or whatever. So so like these things have a lot of history to them, and yet a lot of the history is very new.
Yeah.
So you've been to Jingshan?
I have.
Yeah. So explain what the Jingshan school is like. Like, what is it like as a school?
So in China, there is an idea, thank you, about key school. Key school meaning these schools are very high academically and also with extracurricular activities. So Jingshan School, first of all, the main campus location is in the center of Beijing. And the students are, for high school level, they have to take certain tests in order to go in. And the school is structured in a way that students celebrate all kinds of aspects.
So it's not just a normal school, even in China. It's like a special kind of, it's the type of thing that would do something unusual, like have a sister school program abroad.
Right, and it's also very comprehensive in a way that in addition to our academic exchange, we also have volleyball teams visiting each other.
Oh, cool.
We also had chorus groups. We also had band and visiting each other. So in that level of exchange, and we also had a session with our teachers teaching Jingshan teachers in terms of elementary level pedagogy.
That's
exchange.
cool.
Yeah.
And I bet they really like that too.
Yeah, absolutely.
I remember the teachers in China are all very, very interested in learning as many different angles as they can.
Yes.
I didn't teach, I guess I taught pedagogy of drama education. I did some things where I taught drama teachers in China how to do improv games in the classroom. And beyond the specific improv exercises, it's just different ways of thinking about education. Like, again, for my improv class, I taught an improv class at Beida Fuzhong, which is the Beijing University affiliated high school, which is another one of these big high schools.
Yes.
And I told them, like, when I made the curriculum, and I was able to do this because at Beida Fuzhong, they were very open about the way the students were graded. But I would tell the students on day one, it's like, I've taught a lot of students, I can kind of see where your level is at. I'm not going to judge you where you end up. I want to see you pushing yourself.
Yeah.
I want to see you on stage, like almost falling, but you can fall or you can not fall, but I want to see you close.
Yeah.
And if I don't feel you're pushing yourself, you're not going to get a good participation grade.
Right.
And it's totally subjective.
Yeah.
And suck it, you know. So like, and when you do that, the kids there, they're like, oh, I actually, it's not about the scene, and they really need to believe you. They need to believe that I don't care what the end result is. I want to see them challenge themselves, and if they believe that you believe that, they actually will challenge themselves. Yeah. But for a lot of the drama teachers in China, they were like, oh, I've never even thought about grading the class that way.
Right.
You know, they're like, we'll do drama and then there will be an ending performance.
Right.
And then we'll grade the ending
based on
performance.
yes.
And so even things like the way the students are graded, or is the goal the result, or is the goal the process?
Yeah.
These things, the drama teachers that I taught, a lot of them had never been thinking in that way. You know?
I want to hear your opinion on that in terms of how to make them believe that you believed in that, you know?
Yeah.
Because in our class, every day is you're delivering that message.
I think for me, part of it is obviously what you say.
Yeah.
But then in an acting class, I have the ability to stop the performance and tell them to go back, or to say, like, try that again.
Okay.
So if I see somebody give a really, just like not a good effort, I might stop and say, stop, like, you know, let's go. So by where you stop and where you don't, you can kind of show results. So let's say people did a really good scene. I might say, that was really good. I like that. Let's move on. That's good. It's working. I don't need to talk about it too much. If it's not working, I can, what I'll oftentimes do is I'll find something that didn't work, but there was a good decision in there somewhere. Like somebody will make a big choice in improv and acting. We like big choices. If everybody's just standing like this, it's very boring.
Yeah.
If somebody comes on the scene as a horse, and then the scene is a disaster, then I will say, you know, the scene clearly didn't work, right, people? But what I liked is you came on as a horse. That's a good first decision. This scene didn't work, but I like that. And then just remind people that it's like, you know, whether the scene was good at the end or whether the scene was bad at the end, usually we don't talk too much about that. We're going to pick the decisions. And so by picking those choices that they do and, you know, praising the good choices, or if a student is not putting in the energy and just standing there, we'll say, well, why was the scene not good? You know, you can go up there and just be like, we were all just sitting next to each other and looking at each other. So I want you guys to be making those choices. Try the scene again, but I want you to try it by making a big choice at the beginning. And let's have the same people in the same place. Just make some big choice. I don't care what it is. And I really don't care what it is.
Oh, okay.
And so and by highlighting the parts that you want to encourage, even if it wasn't like a good performance, you can kind of show people like what do I think is important.
Okay.
You know?
Okay.
And then if the students like you, then they want to do performance that you are enjoying.
Yeah.
So I think part of it is that, and then I think also part of it is like at the end you need to, like, you know, having grading kind of in the middle of the semester is sometimes good, where I would tell people like, look, so here's the different parts of your grade. Part of it is on your challenging yourself. That was
like
part of the curriculum.
Okay,
30% of the rubric is challenging yourself.
Oh,
I feel like you have room to go. Like again, it's art, so I have a little bit more leeway.
Yeah.
But I can say like, I feel like you're not there. I've seen it a couple times, but I'm not seeing it all the time. And we've been doing this 6 weeks now. We should be getting better.
Okay.
So if people and I think that a lot of the times the students will agree with you. Like because that effort thing is something that they kind of also know. So it's not about how good they are, because, you know, for most of these students, they're not going to become professional actors.
Right.
It's about how they engage with the process. And that's something that you can kind of highlight specifically with the choices that the students make, and reward the good choices, and, you know, be like, when they're making bad choices, be like, you know, we can get better on that. This is the area we can get better. So I don't know if that makes sense.
Oh, totally. So we're, for language classes, we're doing that every day.
Yeah.
But then the problem is the same thing.
Yeah.
For example, thank you. For example, do we grade them on their level of language,
yeah.
or do we, because not every kid will reach here,
yeah,
right? Or how do we encourage them to go towards the?
So how do you wind up grading? Because some of it is tests and like, did you know the words? But outside of the tests, how do you decide whether the student deserves the higher grade or the lower grade?
Yeah, I'm constantly thinking about that. So this year I'm doing what I'm doing something different is that so they can never rehearse for a performance.
Yeah.
So they can't. Well, for difficult ones, if I want them to focus on certain structures, I'll let them memorize, as you said, like imitate and come. So for easy ones, I just want them to talk. So I grade them by, I ask the pairs to, like popsicle sticks, let them pair, and then they come up with different people.
Nice.
And they come up and just start talking based on one scenario.
Yeah.
And I grade on, for example, you have to have balanced lines. So I can't have one person carrying the whole conversation, right? Yeah. And I have to have it to be some sort of logical sequence, right?
It should make some sense. Yeah. And I think this is the thing is like, whether you're like being able to do a class for language and a class for art are different things. Yeah. Even though the art is useful for language and language is useful for the art, I think there's a lot of power in how you decide to grade people, not because the grade is important, but the grade is useful for telling the students what you think is important.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And also, and I really hope all around the world, education kind of goes more in this direction. It's about self-improvement.
Yes.
Because the whole grading system of like, oh, I have 100, you have 90, I'm 10% better than you or whatever. And you can tell I'm not good at math because I don't think that's 10%. 10% would be
Never mind.
99. But you know what I'm saying. I feel like the self-improvement is the real thing. When you get out into the real world, it's not about like some sort of flat score where the people who score 2 points higher make like, 2 points more money or something like that, or are 2 points more successful.
Yeah.
Like it's about like, how do I get better today than I was yesterday?
Yes.
And if you do that, then it doesn't matter what you do, whether it's videos or tea or whatever. Like if I feel like I can get better than I was before, I feel like eventually I'm going to be good enough that I can do this well.
Yes.
And so for the language as well, that's I think the hardest part for me when I'm talking to students that are learning Chinese. They say it's really hard, and I say you need to be doing it because you want to get better.
Right.
If you want to get better, you will get better. If you want to do this because your reasons are a little unclear, well, that's part of the challenge. Is how do you get better if you don't know why you're doing it? You know. So I think that there's a lot of learning to happen, and hopefully maybe one of the things the kids learn on the exchange is they get to meet other students who are kind of in the same life place as them, but are thinking about different things,
Right, and exactly, that's for kids to see, to go out of Newton, to go out of Massachusetts, to go out of America, to see what are some commonalities, what are some differences, right? We always, whoever we have, Confucius said, for three people walking together, definitely one could be your teacher or teach you something, right? So if the kids at this young age could go on to an exchange for such a long time to see different people and visit different places, and they're like sponges, they absorb all the information and they learn how to make good judgment. So it's obviously if you're in the Newton Public Schools, you should apply to go on the Jingshan Exchange program. If you're in the Newton area, you should donate to the program and help it keep it going. How can people donate? We have a link. We'll have a link. Yes, I can send you a link.
Great.
Yes,
so if you're in the Newton area and you want to support the local schools, send the link. If you're outside of the Newton area and want to support the schools, you can still do that.
And if you want to move to Newton, that's fine too.
Yeah, if you want to move to Newton, you can do that. But even just beyond that, I think for a lot of people, whether parents watching or they have kids who go, like I really, especially having the chance to study abroad in college, if I had had the chance to study abroad in high school, or like that really would have been a very important thing. And I'm glad I got to study in college because like the moment I went outside the country for the first time, I feel was really where my life started changing. And so it's great to hear that these exchanges are still going on between the U.S. and China. Has the kind of like fighting between U.S. and China affected the program in any way?
I would say absolutely. you know, we never asked that question to the community and the families, but obviously everybody it's on people's mind. First of all, parents, do they feel that to sending their child to such a faraway country is that safe?
Yeah.
Right? Especially that when in a travel, the U.S. Website lists
Oh
China
yeah, the State
as
Department will be like maximum risk to go
I
to
know,
China, which,
right? So that when parents see that, what they think is, oh my gosh, what is my child going to? What's going to happen? Right. So, but then at the same time, parents they're getting news and resources, trying to learn what are the risks. Is that a good fit for my child? And if it is, you know, they're here studying with no risks of they're in the comfort zone versus they go to China. There are some they're coming out of the comfort zone, but what they're getting in return. Then every family is doing that calculation.
Do you feel like there's a lot of risk, or like none at all?
I definitely don't think there's risks for our kids to go to China. Honestly, I think they're going to have such a great time. I think the more risk for the program is the more of, do I get along with my host family? You know, do I like the school? Do I like the transportation and the food? You know, it's more of that. Yeah.
So like people might not have a perfect time on the program, but it's not because of like U.S. China. It's because like, oh, you might not like the food, or the rooms might be smaller than you want, or something like that, which could kind of happen anywhere.
Yes.
So I think that's part of the challenge is like, it's very, just like it's hard in China to get good information about America, it's hard in America to get good information about China.
Yes.
And so the students and the parents might all be confused, but you know, we go back and forth and we've lived in the other places. Like, you know, it's really funny, people are worried about safety in China, where it's like America has much more like violent crime than China by a lot.
Right.
In China, you're maybe more likely to get hit by a car.
Right.
But like, you know, but on an everyday basis, it's like, I always feel really sad when like Chinese people say, I don't want to go to America, I'm going to get shot.
I know.
And I'm like, you're not going to get shot tomorrow.
I know.
Like, it's not like as bad. America is the worst gun violence of anywhere in the world, but on any given day, you're probably fine.
Yes.
And in China as well, like, are there places where like you might eat food and get food poisoning? Maybe. But like on any given day, like 1.3 billion Chinese people survived.
Yeah.
So like.
Yeah, exactly. So all these misinformation from the media need our kids to go to each other's countries to really visit, right?
Yeah.
Because when they grow up, this is a world that they are trying to make an impact on, and they need to know firsthand what's it like.
And that's why I always encourage people to go, even if it's only on a vacation, go to China, go to anywhere, because there's kind of two types of knowledge. There's the stuff you've lived through and there's stuff you've read.
Yeah.
You know, and the stuff you've lived through, even though you might only live through a very small part of reality, you really feel it.
Yes.
You believe it because you were there.
Yeah.
And then when you know, a lot of these people will get, sometimes people will comment on the things like, oh, you lived in a communist country. And I'm like, yes, but go live there. Like, live there for a couple weeks. There are differences. There are things that are different, but it's not like there's like everybody who lives in a communist country dies immediately.
Yeah, I know.
And a lot of this misinformation is just because people don't feel it. Reality for them is like you know, international politics is a game they watch like a sports league. Yeah. And it's like, oh, who's winning, who's losing? And for the people who live in the places, it's not that.
No.
You know, so
I mean, eventually everybody just wants to live a peaceful life for themselves and the family, right? People want to enjoy holidays.
Yeah.
People want to get together with family and friends. That is something that every culture has in common. Yeah. Right.
So I think that's a great place to finish off the podcast. Every culture has a lot of that in common, and it's really been one of the most encouraging things about this whole Tea channel has been that not only that people are learning, but that they're willing to learn. Yeah. Because that's the first step. Like, if you're not interested in even hearing what people are saying, it doesn't matter how good they are at talking, you're not listening. So the fact people are open into listening, and when I post in China, the fact that people are open to watching stuff about America, like, that's the basis that keeps everything moving. So I'm very glad that the exchange program is coming back on, And hopefully, maybe in China, if it's going on in April, I might be in China in April.
Yeah, I'll let you know.
If I'm in China in April, maybe we'll film an episode at Jingchan School or something
be
like that. That would be really
lovely.
fun.
That'd be lovely.
We'll see. We're not again, no promises yet, but that would be a lot of fun,
Yeah.
and very much encouraging people to look into that. So
Yeah, thank you, Jesse.
very fun. It's great to have you over here. One
You're
last.
so amazing.
哎，叫喝一口，喝一口，
喝一口，
喝一口，哎，请，哎，Last sip of the tea. What did you think of this aged white tea?
I love it. I've never had aged white tea, I don't think.
This is really good. I'll give you
Just
some
the
to take back.
aftertaste is just, yes, the sweetness, the lingering taste. I don't think I've ever had any tea like this.
It's really good. Aged white tea is the bomb, and it's hard to find good aged white tea that's actually real, because a lot of times they'll say it's 12 years aged, but it's not actually.
How do you know that?
So part of it is you can tell certain ways by the way the leaves look.
Okay.
It should be darker.
Okay.
The leaves will oxidize and get darker. Okay. Ideally, if it's aged naturally, it will have sort of like a matte, like a how you say in Chinese, like 亚光. It'll be like a matte finish.
Okay.
And if it's kind of like shiny and stuff, or like you know, sort of like gray, that kind of has shown that they've fast aged it, and it's not really the same way that it is. So it's a lot of the reason that I can get this good tea, though, is that I have my tea people in China that I've known. The guy Yunqing who gets us this tea, I've known him for 12 years. I've drunk tea at his tea house hundreds of times, and so when I call him and I say I want an aged white tea, I'm able to trust him and say, like, you know, that is it. And I've drunk a lot of tea, so if it was real, if it was fake, I would be able to tell it. So he says this is 2011. If it was 2010 or 2012, maybe I couldn't tell, but I could tell if it was 2017 or 18 or something like that. That was not aged as much. So you got, if you drink a lot of tea, you pick up some weird skills.
This is amazing. So for aged white tea, do they only grow in certain area, or? So
the white tea Fuding, the Fuding in Fujian is where most of the white tea comes from, and that's where this is from. But also in Yunnan, they have a it's called a Yueguang Bai Cha, and that can be aged as well. So there's a lot of different places, and but the Fuding aged white tea is really the best, I think. But yeah, so I don't want to start a fight between the Fujianese and Yunnan people, because this is the sort of stuff they fight about. But in any case, it's great to be able to have you here and to be able to have this tea with you. And thanks so much for coming by.
What a pleasure. Thank you.
Here we go. So stepping off the podcast, if you guys are listening on the audio version, check out the video versions on my YouTube, Jesse's Tea House on YouTube. If you're watching the video on YouTube, check out the audio version, which is on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Jesse's Teatime with Jesse is the name of the show. And if you're interested in having any of the teas we're drinking, the set we're using, the tea pets, which appeared in the second half because I forgot to put them on the first half. All of this stuff is actually on our site, and so it's a great place to get into tea. And if you're interested in supporting the show and supporting your own tea journey, I very much encourage you guys to go get some tea. It's all in the States. We ship within 2 days. It's fun stuff. So I'm Jesse.
I'm Star Lew.
And thanks so much for listening. Have a good time, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.